In the horrid events of Operation Knightfall and Anakin Skywalker's siege on the Jedi Temple, one half of the 501st Legion entered the sacred location and slaughtered almost everyone on sight. While the other half of the 501st was plunging to their deaths over a remote, icy world, the division led by Commander Appo helped to wipe out almost every major member of the Order who was still present except one, Grogu. So who saved Grogu from the onslaught of Anakin Skywalker and the 501st? Well, Chapter 6 of the Book of Boba Fett just gave us an absolutely monumental hint, specifically from Dave Filloni and the Clone Wars series. So let's break down the massive hint towards who took Grogu from the Jedi Temple during Order 66. Before we dive into it, make sure you give me your episode rating out of 10 for Chapter 6 and also subscribe while you're down there. In the latest episode of the Book of Boba Fett, we get one of the best looks inside of the Jedi Temple during Order 66 in canon. In fact, this is pretty much the only look we get inside during Anakin's slaughter in the current canon at all, so it was truly awesome to see that. In order to do this, Luke uses a kinda new Force ability to tap into the mind of his young underling Grogu and revisit the very painful memory of that dark day. Once he does this, he sees through Grogu's eyes that 3 Jedi are fighting to their absolute last breath, presumably to defend him and his escape. We don't currently know who these 3 Jedi actually are, but many people have suggested that they could be Jedi Battlemaster Sindralig, as well as his students Bene and Wai-Mao Ro. Now, based on looks alone, this is very reasonable, but there is one major thing pointing away from that being the case. In Revenge of the Sith, we actually see these 3 show up when Obi-Wan views the security recordings from Anakin's slaughter. In those recordings, Obi-Wan directly sees Anakin dueling and presumably slaughtering them in cold blood. The Jedi in Grogu's memory are clearly killed by 501st clone troopers with blaster bolts, and shot many times after they were already dead. So it doesn't really fit for it to be them, but I'm sure we'll get a comic line in the near future explaining more of this in detail and some of the other heartbreaking events from that day. But despite all of that, there is one more key piece of information from Grogu's memory that could tell us exactly who saved him. If you look up to both the top right and top left corners of the scene when Grogu was witnessing the slaughter of the Jedi, you can actually see a very interesting little emblem or crest painted directly onto the walls of the temple. Now, believe it or not, this crest actually belongs to none other than the disgraced Jedi Temple bomber and Padawan of Luminara Unduli herself, Barriss Offee. In the Clone Wars Season 5 episode, The Wrong Jedi, you can see this exact same crest residing in the quarters of Barriss Offee. It sits right behind her as she calls Ahsoka, attempting to frame her for the attack on the Jedi Temple. It can also be seen on the sliding doors which lead into her rooms, but the most interesting location for the crest is actually on the door across from Barriss's quarters, matching up 100% exactly to the shot we see in Grogu's flashback scene. This very clearly pinpoints the location of the battle between the clone troopers and the Jedi to the hallway outside of Barriss's quarters. If you look just behind Anakin in the Wrong Jedi episode before he enters Barriss's room, you can clearly see the same logo as the one on Barriss's door on the room across from hers. Again, clearly pinpointing the location of the battle to right in front of Barriss's room. For Dave Filloni to place it right in front of that room is very clearly pointing to a Barriss Offee connection. He rarely places little hints like this into the story without some greater meaning down the line. Now, the reason we know for sure that this is Barriss Offee's crest comes from the Wrong Jedi episode guide, where it features in her room and is attributed to her and her personal space. On top of that, it also features the same markings that Barriss Offee has on her face as a member of the Mirialan species. This does leave us with a big question though. Why does Barriss have 2 rooms? Well, we know from the Clone Wars that she was a very good student. She followed all of the rules, regulations and teachings of the Order, never straying too far from the dogma. This was in stark contrast to Ahsoka and her master Anakin, who broke every rule in the book and took every risk they could. Different teaching styles for sure, but Luminara and Barriss's adherence to the strict codes were way more likely to get her a double room quarters in the temple. Maybe she even used the one where Anakin enters as a sleeping area while the other one is used as a study for Force-related matters. Whichever it is, they're definitely Barriss's rooms, pointing to her as a potential savior for Grogu. But there is still one major question that needs to be answered in order for this to be true. How did Barriss get out of prison and get back to her room? The first option is that after the trial she was placed on house arrest and therefore sent back to her living quarters in the Jedi Temple. This one is very unlikely, as it was pretty clear that Ahsoka was going to get the death penalty before it was found out that Barriss was the one behind it. This probably means that Barriss faced the same punishment. If this was the case, there's no way Tarkin and the Republic would let her await execution on house arrest. The next option is that Palpatine allowed her to escape with the help of the Grand Inquisitor after executing Order 66 on the Jedi Order. We know from the comics that the Grand Inquisitor actually turned to the dark side before the Purge and even helped the 501st to execute his Jedi Temple guard brothers on that day. So maybe Palpatine unleashed him and sent him off to free Barriss, hoping to turn her away from the Order. At that point, Barriss may have escaped to her old room where she discovered Grogu and took him to safety. This is very plausible because although Barriss turned violent on the Order, she wasn't a supporter of the Sith or the forthcoming Empire in any way. She was angry at the Jedi's choice to use violence and participate in the war rather than remain peacekeepers. So even though she turned against the Council, there's no way she'd stand by and allow the slaughter of the whole Order and the fall of the Republic. This makes her the perfect candidate to save Grogu. Another very possible option is that she managed to break free from her cell during the chaos of Order 66 and return to her quarters in the temple that way. I could easily see the clones open her cell and attempt to execute her as soon as they are given the directive from Supreme Chancellor Palpatine, but then she uses the Force to defeat them. At this point, the cell door would be left open and she easily has the combat training necessary to break free from the Republic prison compound and get back to her quarters. At that point, she would have the opportunity to rescue Grogu in the hallway outside of her room, maybe as she's on the way back from the prison cell. A further point of contention would be, what are her actual intentions with Grogu? Does she simply want to protect him, or does she have other uses for him separate from the desires of Palpatine and the newly formed Vader? Maybe Barriss has become so deluded and warped from her time in prison that she intends to save Grogu and team up with him in an attempt to overthrow Palpatine and the Empire. This was done by many foolish and arrogant Jedi after the Clone Wars in Legends, and as you can guess, they all failed. Each time a Jedi attempted to rise up from the Purge and take down Palpatine, they were quickly dispatched by Vader or Palpatine himself. Either way, this is where things get even darker. It's possible that Barriss took Grogu not for her own purposes, but to serve the new Emperor and provide him with an Inquisitor called the First Brother, a slot which has not been filled yet in canon. This has some slight backing by the fact that Grogu often resorts to Force abilities which stray towards the dark side. Things like Force Choke and refusing to let go of Cara Dune could point to him having some of those suppressed memories of Barriss's dark side influence come through. But that again assumes that Barriss actually fell to the dark side and wanted to help Palpatine. Although it's possible, it's more likely that she wouldn't stand for the Empire's rights. We're getting tons and tons of Inquisitors showing up in the Obi-Wan show, so I think we could get more information on that over there, as it's pretty clear now that all of these shows are connecting. I originally thought that Obi-Wan was going to be separate from this little Mandoverse storyline that's being told, but at this point, I think even that will be part of it. There are so many overlapping and mutual characters that it can easily connect without being forced. It might even add a great deal to both stories, so I'm very excited, and who doesn't want to see more Barriss Offee? Barriss may even end up on the search for Ezra and Thrawn alongside Sabine and Ahsoka. Or maybe she's an anti-hero in that storyline. Really, the possibilities are endless. She could play any role, and she could be good or evil. Or she could even be redeemed. There's so many opportunities. But either way, I think we'll get a solid answer to this question in either episode 7 of the Book of Boba Fett, when Luke restores more of Grogu's memories to help him with the big decision, or we'll get more from The Mandalorian Season 3. Whichever way you slice it, Barriss will be a part of this unfolding story as one of Dave Filoni's most interesting characters from this time period. He has also confirmed many times that he still has plans for Barriss Offee and that much of her story has already been laid out. When that actually gets to the screen, well, we'll have to see about that. Whether that means she takes the dark path in contrast to Ahsoka or the light path is still yet to be seen. So let me know what you think about Barriss possibly saving Grogu and how it might tie into the rest of the story. I will be very interested to hear what you guys have to say about it in the comments down below. So I hope you enjoyed seeing that very subtle little hint placed in the episode by Dave Filloni at the temple. Knowing his track record, he didn't just have that Barriss crest placed there for no reason. Either it's a hint that she is the one who saved Grogu, or it's a hint for her appearance in the Ahsoka show. Whichever it is, I'm very excited to see what happened. Thanks so much for watching, really hope you enjoyed the video. Cheers guys, hope to see you in the next one.